Call the meeting to order.
The meeting has been posted according to open meeting laws.
Roll call.
President Seeger.
Here.
Trustee Renucci. Here. Commissioner Arndt.
Here.
Commissioner Morath.
Here.
And Commissioner Lederhouse.
Here.
Thank you.
Yeah, 40, you definitely have to move because the only way these meetings are televised, the only way they can hear it is through the microphone, so. Citizen participation per Village Resolution 2017-01. Anyone wishing to address the Planning Commission during citizen participation will be allowed 5 minutes. Your subject can be anything whether on the agenda or not. The Planning Commission should not engage in a discussion regarding comments because it was not part of a publicly noticed agenda. Upon conclusion of the citizen participation segment, members of the audience are not allowed further comment unless they are participating in a public hearing or if specifically allowed by a majority vote of the Planning Commission due to involvement in an agenda item. With that being said, would anybody like to speak during citizen participation? Would anybody like to speak during citizen participation? If no, then I will close citizen participation and move on to approval of the Planning Commission minutes from January 9th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to two-lot certified survey map, CSM, in Town of East Troy, within the Village Extraterritorial Plat Review jurisdiction, located at North 8356 Weber Lane. Frederick and Judith Kamek, application 2023-02, and I'm sorry if I butchered that name. Does anybody have any questions about the memo?
Mike Creason, V2G Surveying.
Does anybody have any questions about this? Does anybody have any questions about Tim's memo? Limitations on what we can do in an extraterritorial situation, so I'd be looking for a motion at this point.
I'll make a motion to recommend the village board to approval of the proposed CSM in the town of East Troy, subject to the conditions listed on page 2.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, proposed amendment of the village's comprehensive plan by changing the land use clarification as part of a tax parcel RXUP 00202, Kiwanis Heritage, Inc., applicant, application 2023-03. I'll have the same questions on this one. Does anybody have any questions about this change? Anybody have any questions about the memo? Any questions about the proposal from Tim? Then I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the village board the approval of the resolution dated February 9th of 23, based on the findings contained in the draft resolution.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I just think it's neat that they're doing this because that means that everything is working out well and it's a benefit to the community.
I agree. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on to zoning code interpretation of what it is meant by attached with regard to attached garage. Brian Schultz, applicant, application 2023-04. Now this one, we're going to have a little bit of conversation about this. Does anybody understand what is being presented to us at this point? Tim, did you want to kind of highlight some of the points in this one?
So essentially, there is a process as part of the zoning code that describes how, if there's a question, who makes that interpretation. It kind of starts with the zoning administrator, then it goes to the plan commission. Plan commission makes a recommendation, and then it actually goes up to the village board. But what's most important is there's a set of standards or factors that you need to be thinking about in making that interpretation. Essentially, those are listed on the staff report. What's kind of telling is it basically says that if the interpretation has the effect of kind of counteracting, why the zoning code or a provision was adopted in the first place, then that interpretation should not be rendered, okay? Basically, in this case, the intent is to attach the house to a separate garage by a breezeway. And essentially, I mean, you can kind of think about all the variations of that. I mean, you could have a second breezeway off of the back of this garage, connecting another building, or a breezeway of any length. And, both of those, collectively, I mean, if you kind of take it to the logical conclusion, I mean, that would, have a detriment to adjoining property owners, because that, again, was not the original intent of having restrictions on the number of buildings and sizes.
As far as location for this one, the neighboring property is an empty lot that once was a school. So this one, I understand what you're saying, what about future?
Right.
And it
So
makes sense, but.
Yes.
yeah.
So basically, an interpretation saying, yes, you connect buildings by breezeways applies across the board.
I have a question though in regards to what you're saying, that like, you don't want to see a domino effect of building another garage, another breezeway, another garage, another breezeway. But I thought that you were only allowed to have so many outbuildings on your property in the village. If you had a home and you had a lot in the village, you are allowed to build a garage.
Yep.
But I thought you are limited to the number or size of other buildings that can be put on the lot.
And that's true. But essentially, if the interpretation is made that, yes, this is one building, okay, then there can be additional accessory buildings.
Well, I see what you're saying, but essentially you're building an outbuilding or an additional building to be connected. Ergo, then, that would use up that one, no? Well, that's the way, I'm sorry, that's the way I looked at it.
I wouldn't look at it like that. I don't think our building inspector would. Would you, Scott?
Well, I mean, that's why it's here, because we have no size limitations on attached garages. So if that's attached, it wouldn't count as a detached building, and therefore,
Well, first of all, I applaud you for the work you've done in your home. I really like that home. The pillars in the front, I've always enjoyed driving past that home. The representation that you have here, incredible. I think it just is going to enhance the home. With that being said, is there anything that you'd like to state?
Well, and that was what we've been trying to figure out. I think that right now, the way you guys have this stuff written, I can build a 400 square foot garage on that's a small 2-car garage, which even with the vehicles we have now, and I mean, we have a truck and a little SUV, but won't get both of them in there. I have a kid that's going to be driving. I'm trying to figure out ways where I could do something nice and still get all the stuff where I don't have my kid parking on the street or, in the driveway. And that's when I came up with, well, what is attached? I mean, if I put sides on that breezeway, is it a hallway? That's where but I wanted to come in front of everybody before I just, well, let's do this and see if we can get away with it, because this project is quite costly.
So in my opinion, as a contractor, a person that does this stuff for a living every day, if I'm looking at an attached garage, if I'm building it, it has to be by way of footings that are in the ground, 4 feet or better, to attach the two buildings together. Now it becomes a single building, of which that we've now have those questions. Are we allowing for this attached in this manner? Is that what we're here to discuss? Is that right, Tim?
Is this a slab?
The breezeway there that goes across?
Well, is the garage existing already?
No, I don't, I have a one-car garage I'd be tearing down,
Got it.
and this would be the new structure that went on.
And I see, to Scott's point though, would it be grade beams or would it be 4-foot footings?
Footings.
Okay.
My builder and engineer and everything else would be pour footings, and it would, everything would be engineered to go across to make this.
Okay, so then it isn't attached then. It's not a question of it being attached. It's a question of if our ordinance allows for this attached in this scenario.
Right. So it's my understanding, and, you know, building inspectors here, but essentially, you know, the building code term for attachment is different than what the zoning code calls for. So you could have a foundation connecting two different buildings, and the buildings are attached, according to the building code. But that's, you know, building code, and we're here to interpret the zoning code, okay? So again, you have to kind of look at the intent of why the zoning code provision was written as it was. And it's intended to kind of control the mass of buildings on a particular piece of property, so you just don't have building after building after building. And then, you know, there's detriment, and you kind of undermine the whole intent of the zoning code in the first place, so. And the other thing I would just, you know, conclude with is basically no matter what the final interpretation is, you know, the zoning code should address it one way or the other. So,
And we're talking about making some kind of recommendation for changing of the zoning code potentially?
well, I mean, that might be part of it, but the interpretation is, you know, does a breezeway connecting two buildings mean that it's attached and that they are indeed one building? That's the interpretation that you're making.
In my opinion, if it has a footing, it's attached. That's it. And maybe it's because I'm taking the simple idea of what the code would identify. But if you're going through the effort of attaching foundations and going below the frost line with them, it's an attached building to me. What do you guys think? What, 40?
I was gonna ask is if it's just, let's say somebody has a two-car garage on a grade beam slab, and they wanna connect it with a breezeway. And would that then be considered also?
No, it's not a 4-foot footing.
I understand, I guess what I'm getting at then is, and I'm, if somebody built a breezeway but stopped it like 3 feet short and put a door on it and put a door at the house, then would that be considered connected?
No, it would not.
Okay.
So, again, you know, I think we need to separate, you know, building code from zoning code. So we had a situation, Scott and I, where there was an individual who had a single-family house, and he wanted to have a pool cabana, okay? And he couldn't have that pool cabana, so what he did in his mind was to make a single wall connecting the house to the building underground as the foundation, okay? It was connected. There's a foundation connecting those two buildings, and we were like, no, that's building code, we're talking zoning code. So, I mean, you have to kind of think about other scenarios, and just because you've got a foundation connection and it's covered, you've got two separate buildings, does,
This one in particular has a roof line and everything over the top of it, right?
yeah, but that's not your definition of connection, right? So, yeah.
Yes, I'd have to elaborate on that. I would also consider a roof line having to connect the buildings as well. But, you know, first thing, foundation, then having some kind of roof line would identify connected buildings. I'm looking for your opinion on this one too, Tim.
Yeah, I kind of look at it differently. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's two separate buildings. You know, I mean, that's how I look at it, because, I mean, you could have, you know, any kind of, you know, length of a breezeway, you know, 10 feet or 30 feet or whatever distance, 300 feet. And in fact, not in a community where Scott works, we had a situation where somebody had 4 different independent cottages. They were allowed 1. They built them illegally, and they connected them by a 200-foot breezeway from building to building to building. And that's a logical conclusion of an interpretation like that.
It was like an enclosed hallway.
No, it was just a roof. It was just a roof connecting buildings, and it was just a daisy-chained, conglomeration of buildings. And you look at it, it's like, yeah, there's 4 separate buildings, and they just happen to have a little breezeway between them. So I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I don't know, Scott?
I guess my opinion is if the commission would be of a mind to approve something like that, that you amend the ordinance to restrict, the length of connections, because there is another one I've seen where they connected the garage like this 80 feet away through a breezeway like that, 80 feet, it's like 6 feet wide, and because they couldn't have an outbuilding. So, as the planner was saying, that I mean, if you do decide that that's okay, I think it should be amended to put limitations on how far you could go.
So
Or
this one-
what type the connection should be, whether it's enclosed or open or,
So this breezeway looks like it's about 35 feet.
Yeah, that's all. That's rough stuff right now because I didn't want to spend to get all the stuff drawn up, to the T before I knew whether I could do it because I didn't want to be in it and then, but yeah, it's right around, I think it's right around 30 feet. And it could be moved. I mean, we could move the garage up or whatever if we had to.
I have a question in regards to dimensions or the criteria we were looking at. Now, the way I understand it, the village has an ordinance now where you're allowed a garage
Yes.
unattached on your property. And are you also allowed 1 outbuilding?
That would be your outbuilding.
Well, what if somebody wanted like a yard shed? A 10-foot yard shed?
you could have one accessory structure and one accessory structure less than 150 square feet.
Okay, so you can then have 2, technically. I mean, if you want to
Yes.
look at it from, so I guess then maybe what I was thinking then, Scott, would be that you'd say, if you had a garage, you want to attach it, fine, you're still allowed that 1 accessory building of 150 square feet or not.
That's
But-
already existing. That's
I
already existing in
understand, but I'm
code.
saying if they, what I'm trying to say is that if people connect it with a breezeway, you're not allowed to build another 2-car garage.
I mean, one thing I think you should also consider is, especially in the older part of town, there's a lot of older buildings and it just doesn't really look right to attach a garage to them.
Plus, the lots are a lot smaller, too.
Yeah, but I mean, even still, just the way the houses are built, they're just not really made to attach a garage to them.
That is exactly my point, because we looked at physically attaching a garage to the backside of the house. It can be done, but my house would lose all its character. I mean, it doesn't belong there. It would look silly. I can't do it. It just, we've tried to keep up the value of the old house. We've done everything we've done to it. We try to keep it, I guess, in its era. I attach a garage to it, and the backside like that, it's gonna look funny. It's I don't know. Nobody really sees the backside of the house, but I have to. So
This way, it looks more like a carriage house.
in a sense, yes, I would say, yeah, maybe.
Saying it adds to the age, to the, what's the word I'm looking for? I hate
It's
getting old.
aesthetically pleasing to the character of the home.
There you go. That's the $5 word.
Well, I like Scott's idea. Minimizing the amount of length, I think I would put it at 40 feet. The length of a breezeway that could be incorporated in a home, qualifying a home to have an attached garage. The other qualifiers would be that it has a footing, both the garage and the breezeway, with a connecting roof line.
So basically, the interpretation is whether in this instance, this is one building or two. And then getting at, kind of clarifying the zoning code, that's when we get into those details about, well, actually, this is what means to be attached.
Well, that's what I was trying to clarify, is that's what I would classify as what it means to be attached. That's what I was trying to state. So then we would say that, yep, this is attached.
Okay,
So then what's our next step?
make that motion, and it goes to the village board. But then again, my recommendation is no matter what's decided, is come back to the zoning code and kind of clarify what it actually means to be attached. And, that's where you can build in those kind of, parameters. So
Well, I
that would
want
be
more discussion as well before
Yeah.
we pass it on to the board. But what does everybody else think? I mean, I'm just throwing my opinion out there.
I would agree, Scott, with you that as long, if they're gonna put that much money into the building, that they're gonna attach the foundations to each other, that they're gonna they really wanna do it, and especially when they attach the roof line. I think this looks really good, honestly. And I totally see where the applicant's coming from as far as if he attaches it to the house and what's it gonna look like versus how he's proposing it now. But I also see where where Tim's coming from, where if you let this go or if you amend this, and what else is gonna come forward too. But as long as we have parameters, I think you kind of have an idea of what it's gonna be like, I'm good with it.
All right, I would make a motion then to recommend to the village board that this is an attached building that would fall within our soon-to-be modified zoning code.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. A sign permit for Al Smith's in Downtown Design District located at 2878 Main Street, ROP 00056. Stan Spleen, right? Okay, Stan Spline. Properties LLC, Kitty Stickman, agent, application 2023-05. Anybody have any questions about this? This is pretty clear. It's less than the 25 square feet.
In terms of sign area, it's fine. If you want to just talk about the colors, because that's obviously not rendered. And I tried to describe it, and then she says, well, that's not exactly.
That was my mistake. I never really informed him. The coloring, I think the letters, I've been talking to the guy who does it. He's an old school painter, so he doesn't know much with computers or at all. I like to go like gold leaf, the lettering, like make it old, make it historical, like a saloon. And then like the background, it's gonna be more like a green, a dark green color, like a green. And then with the outlining of the lettering might be kind of red. That's what he's thinking about, what he's been suggesting. Because he's been doing a lot of signs and more in like old downtown Milwaukee, so it's gonna be gold leaf lettering, and the background is gonna be more like an olive green color. So I hope that will be okay.
Sounds like it's gonna look amazing.
Perfect, thank you so much, appreciate it.
Yeah, what Lori just said, that the siding looks great, everything you've done to improve the building looks incredible, so, good job. So are you looking for a motion from somebody?
Sure. A motion to approve the wall signs proposed based on the 4 above-mentioned criteria listed in the zoning code.
Second it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, potential revision to the zoning regulations with regards to the standards for accessory buildings in the industrial zoning districts. Has everybody read the proposed changes? Any questions on those at all?
I just, the only question I had, Tim, is could you, what was the main reasoning that we had to make this adjustment?
Because there are a couple of buildings within the community that already exist that are non-conforming, and we wanted to be able to make something amenable for them to maintain their structures,
All right,
only in the industrial areas.
Right. And if I could just jump in, last time we looked at this last month, there was a blank for the size of the building. I put in a placeholder of 3,000. Actually, if we bump it up to 3,200, I think that would be appropriate, because that'll cover the 40 by 80. Yeah. And the other thing to note is I made a couple minor changes. Basically, you're allowed one of these kinds of buildings. Whether it's 2,000 square feet or 3,200 square feet, you get one poly structure on the property, whether it's primary building or accessory building, it doesn't matter. And you get one and that's it.
because then the other buildings have to conform with what the initial or original construction.
Right, I mean, it's gotta look like a building with siding and roofing and, you know. So, that's the other change I just wanted to point out so we didn't get caught short.
Need a motion?
Do we need a motion then, or we have to put it to a public hearing first, right?
So basically, just, you know, a motion to, you know, direct staff to schedule a public hearing based on the draft as presented or as modified.
Proposal to, we should make a motion directing the village planner and staff to set a public hearing date for formal review of the changes.
Second.
And that'll include the revised square footage of 3,200 square feet, right, your motion? Perfect. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, any recommendations for future agendas from anyone?
Is there gonna be any discussion about what we're gonna talk about on the plan commission level? As far as with this breezeway stuff or anything, is that gonna come back or?
Well, it will after
Okay.
it goes through the village board.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought, I mean, obviously, if the village board approves the interpretation, then at the next month's meeting, then we can, you know, kind of talk about, you know, what parameters would kind of, you know, be appropriate, so, okay.
Our next meeting is March 13th, right here, 6:30. Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.